Let's get to the payment calculator. Welcome. Let's jump into how this works. There are 3 tabs: an input tab, mortgage tab, and a basic PITI tab. These 2 tie together. The third one is kind of a standalone, and I'll get to why. This is drawn from my years in banking and financial analysis to make things easy. Anything in blue is an input cell. Anything in black is a calculation, and anything in green is a number that is important. You're going to want to save a copy. You won't be able to edit this unless you make a copy, because this is going to be shared to other people. And go through a rough example. Let's assume that your maximum monthly payment you were comfortable with was $4,500 a month. You knew that the taxes for the home you wanted to buy was $14,000 a year. You spoke with your insurance agent. They told you about $2,300 a year for this house. No PMI, no HOAs. Your maximum principal and interest is $3,142, assuming a 7% interest rate on a 30-year fix, and you could change this to a different amortization, a different interest rate. You're looking at a max loan amount of almost $500,000, and because you're putting 10% down, or in this case 20%, because you're putting 20% down, your max purchase price is $621,000. This number represents 80% of this number. Now, if you say, well, gosh, that's $124,000. I only want to put down 10%. Then you're going to be looking at $550,000. If you want to put down 5%, even less, $523,000, and so on. Now, why? This is also something interesting. Let's say rates go down, right, to 6%. So if you were to put down 10% with this budget, and rates drop from 7% to 6%, your purchasing power goes up $30,000. Now, let's go to the payoff tab. This ties in. This is in black because this 472, it pulls everything in from the first page where you put in your inputs. So we got a 7% rate. This is not necessary to put in. It's only putting it in if you wanted to see what an extra payment would do. If you want to put an extra payment, you can do that here. Total interest paid. Now, what this represents, there's 2 graphs here. What this graph represents is for your monthly payment of $3,141, how much money is going towards interest and how much is going to pay down your loan or towards principal. And you can see it's around 18 years when the principal amount starts to exceed the interest the bank is getting. And just for curiosity's sake, this total interest paid is the total amount of interest the bank would receive if you kept the loan the full 30 years and didn't make an extra payment. And if you really want to geek out, the full amortization table is there. You can see how things work. Let's say I decide I want to make an extra monthly payment of $200 a month. What would that look like? Well, what it would do is it would take my 30-year mortgage down to 25 years. So it saved me a little over 5 years, lower the interest paid, and total loan costs with extra payments, the total amount of extra payments over 30 years. And that covers that. And you can even see in the graph what that does as far as accelerating the remaining balance with that extra payment. So a little something extra if you wanted to play around with it, but not necessary. And then finally, I did put in a third somewhat independent sheet simply because this tells you the max comfortable amount, a purchase price of $525 with 10% down. But if you say, look, I'm just curious if I want to buy a house for $450, 7% 30-year fixed, I left this in. I did not put a blue background in there only because while this is pulled from the input sheet, if you were looking and considering, say, an adjustable rate mortgage in ARM and maybe they had a 5.5% rate, it's not going to mess around with the input sheet. That still stays the same. So let's just say, keep things simple, and start date alone, not really important. It just is there to calculate how much time you have left. Extra monthly payment, 0. Taxes, this is pulled from the input sheet. Insurance, and again, you could change this. Let's say there is an HOA and PMI. This is the loan amount is here, $405. This is an input. Why is this an input? I don't know if you're going to put 10% down. If you did put 10% down on $450, it'd be $405. But I do have people who say, look, I've got $30,000 to work with. Well, that would be $420,000 loan. And I didn't want, if you wanted to play with this to your heart's content, you could play with all of it. But I didn't want this sheet to impact and change these 2 sheets. So this is, you could modify it specifically if you say, gosh, I don't want to play the full amount. I don't want to buy a $500,000 house. How can I back into it? So these two sheets are the maximum amount you're comfortable with. Yeah, you could just play with it and say, listen, I'm really only comfortable with $4,000. My max purchase price is now $440 with 10% down. This gives you a little bit more customization without interfering with all those calculations. And I did put in amortization table. That is how to use this sheet. I hope it saves you tons of stress and time. If you have questions or additional feedback, I love to hear it. Shoot me a text, phone call, whatever. And I hope you get a lot of value and it saves you some stress and time moving forward.